All right, guys, welcome back to the show. We are on to our final segment of the show, and this is our college corner, and we're going to talk a little spring football. A few days ago, over the weekend, I believe, or maybe it was a few days before the weekend, Deion Sanders came out and was basically saying that he was advocating for an actual spring football game as opposed to just scrimmages within the team. You know, with Florida, you've got the orange and blue game. You know, every college has some sort of similar thing to that, where it's the red and white game or crimson and white game with Alabama, whatever you want to call it. But they're basically all just scrimmages within the team. But Deion Sanders is basically saying that he would advocate for a regular spring football game, as in the NFL, when you see during the offseason and training camp, they'll run joint practices with teams and before they end up having a preseason game with that team that they've been practicing with. Basically, Deion Sanders is sort of saying that that's what he kind of wants to happen in college football. And I know there are some teams, there are a lot of coaches out there who do not want spring games at all. 19 of the Power 4 college football teams have canceled their spring games so far this year. But they're going to be running, Colorado that is going to be running joint practices and a scrimmage game with Syracuse this spring. Now, Colorado and Syracuse have not actually played each other in decades. It's been a very, very long time since they played each other. But they're going to be having a joint practice and a scrimmage in the offseason. And I personally kind of like the idea of the joint practices and scrimmage games with other teams and things like that. I think it's a good way to not only get a feel for teams and what other teams across the country are trying to do and how they're trying to be successful, but you can also kind of get your young players that are looking forward to a career in the NFL, hopefully, if their career goes well. You can kind of get them accustomed to playing an NFL season like that, because if you do spring games and then leading into the college football season, then that's more games. And in the NFL, where they're increasing the amount of time or the amount of games that they're playing in the regular season, and they seemingly are probably going to increase it more so as we go forward, I think this is a good way to kind of, get these young guys prepared for how that's going to be in the NFL, because you see it too many times across the league that these rookies, they'll hit a rookie wall because they're not used to playing this many games of football, this many snaps. In college, you're only playing, if you get to a bowl game or get into the playoffs, you're playing maybe like 12, 13, maybe 14 games, something like that. In the NFL, you're playing 17 games in the regular season, and then, of course, you've got the playoffs. If you make it that far, of course. So that's extra games, and you're working longer, And so I feel like that would kind of get more players kind of accustomed to, playing that sort of schedule, playing that sort of a long season. And it might help them in the long run in their careers. So a lot of people are against it, though, due to, of course, the risk of injury. That's always a risk. But I always, kind of push back on that excuse with a lot of things when it comes to football. Like, we don't want to do this because it could get somebody hurt or, something like that. And the bottom line is you can get injured anywhere at all. It doesn't necessarily even have to be during a game. You can get injured in practice. You can get injured getting out of the tub in the morning. It's happened before to guys. Where they hurt their ankle or they, land wrong on their foot or on their knee or something like that, and some weird accident and they get injured. And like I said, people get injured in practice all the time, so I don't really necessarily even agree with that argument, because you risk injury every single time that you do the act of playing football. That's just bottom line, But, I mean, I get it. You don't want to risk an injury on a, ultimately meaningless game, so I get that part, but you're still having that risk of injury regardless, even if you're in practice, so. But one of the issues that I kind of do sort of understand is a tampering issue, and a lot of coaches are kind of concerned about that. It runs the risk of recruits being taken away from other schools. If you have other schools coming in, they can evaluate your talent and then maybe try and tamper or, legal tampering. And, they can maybe try and get that player away from your school and into their program with the transfer portal and NIL deals and all of that goes on nowadays. It's possible for any team to just throw enough money at a player or, a program, and then they can get that player. But few guys have, basically come out against it. Nebraska's head coach is against it. He said the word, and this is just his quote, and I'll just say the full quote here. The word tampering doesn't exist anymore. It's just absolute free, open, common market, he said. And so I don't necessarily want to open up to the outside world. Don't want these guys all being able to watch our guys and say, wow, he looks like a pretty good player. Let's go get him. So that's just kind of what I was just talking about there. That's one of the risks that you have with that. So that's an understandable risk and an understandable concern from head coaches. And, some coaches, of course, have disagreed with that sentiment as well. Clemson head coach Dabo Swinney, he doesn't really believe in that sentiment because he doesn't think that taking away spring games is going to stop tampering. And he might be onto something there. I mean, if teams are looking at a certain guy and want to get a guy to their program, then they're going to do it. They're going to find their way to do it. They don't need to watch them live in a scrimmage situation. They can just watch previous game film, whether that be a young guy, a young recruit, you want to watch his high school film, or if he's a guy that's been on the team for a year or two, you want to watch his previous games and see how he operates on the field. You can still do all of that without spring games, so that's a reasonable argument to make. South Carolina head coach, he chimed in on it too, Shane Beamer. He basically agreed with what Dabo was saying. They don't need to watch a spring game to figure out who's on our team if they're trying to tamper with them and get them. That's what Shane Beamer from South Carolina said. And Texas coach Steve Sarkisian, like I said, a lot of these guys they've spoken up about it. And he's another guy that he doesn't like the idea of the spring games because there are teams out there that play a lot of games as it is. And with Texas, they've played about 30 games in 2 years with all of their success. They've been in the college football playoff the past 2 seasons. And obviously that's a lot of games. But 30 games in 2 years, guess what? That's less than what you play in the NFL, in 2 years. If you're a starter, if you play every single game in the NFL, that's a 17-game season. So that's 34 games that you're playing, in 2 years. So again, that's kind of helping players getting accustomed to an NFL season with that amount of games too. So in a way, playing that many games in 2 years, I could see the people who are against it. I can see that because that's a lot of wear and tear. But at the same time, it could be a good thing because those young players, especially players of teams that are going to the college football playoffs, there's a lot of NFL prospects on those teams. So they want to get themselves accustomed to an NFL season, which is the ultimate goal as a college football player, I would think. And getting in one of those teams and playing all of those games, that will get you accustomed to it. So there's a bright side to that, playing that many games. And many players in the NFL, like I said, they hit a rookie wall at the end of the year. And this would kind of help sort of mitigate some of that, I think, by playing that many games. But like I said, I can see the argument on both sides, why anybody would want and why anybody would not want that. Because with Deion Sanders, his whole idea, I think, is he wants this would be a way to get more attention onto the game as well as bring in more money because you can televise these games just like a preseason game. The NFL makes a lot of money on preseason games too. They get a lot of viewers, especially in that first week when people were craving football. And, this doesn't mean that you have to have 2-3 preseason games or scrimmage games, spring games like that, like the NFL does. But this would at least, put more eyes on your team and, that would generate more money ultimately because you would have networks like CBS and ESPN and all of that would want to cover it. So you could make money that way. So I can understand it. And Deion Sanders, of course, is a pretty solid head coach for Colorado. He's, turned that program from, a 4-win squad to, consistently like an 8-win squad or a team that's, right up there. They're still not national championship contenders or anything like that. But, they're at least better than they were before Dion got there. And Dion's always trying to, make his program better or make his program the best. And he wants to get more eyes so that he can help with recruiting. And I think doing something like this would definitely help with recruiting, because you can get more players that, see more of your, what you're trying to do, and that'll help bring them into your program. So I totally get why Dion would want it. And again, I get why people would be against it. It's just one of those things, and we'll see if it ever comes to that. There's a lot of college football teams that are canceling spring games for risk of injury, so maybe it doesn't necessarily turn into anything, but Colorado and Syracuse could be the pioneers of this situation of maybe starting a mini sort of preseason sort of thing. It's not even really preseason, because it's still several months away from August when football actually kicks off, or September in college. So that is basically what he was talking about, and that is just my thoughts on it overall. I'd be interested to know what you guys' thoughts are on it as well. It's kind of an interesting conversation, an interesting topic that I found just when I was randomly researching certain topics for tonight's show, and I came across that one. So thought it was an interesting topic to talk about, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that. But that is it for tonight's show. Happy Monday, everybody. I'm glad you guys joined me. I'm glad anybody who watches the show, I always appreciate it as well. And once again, if you guys want to contribute to the show in any way, you can, of course, hit the GSMCSports.net, hit the super chat feature, and you can type in all of your questions or comments right in there. So thank you once again for tuning in to the GSMC Football Podcast. We are presented, as always, by the GSMC Sports Network, and your support means a lot to us. So please remember to subscribe to the show and leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. So we also invite you to follow us on all of the social medias, Facebook, X, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. Thank you once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful night, and we'll be right back here, same time tomorrow. So I look forward to joining you guys there. So thank you guys, and you guys have a great night.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to